Welcome everyone to M365UK. This is a June edition. So in fact, it's been 4 years now, believe it or not. It was 4 years ago this month when I started up the M365UK. So no celebrations yet. We'll have to wait for the next one. That's when we can officially, that's when I can say that 4 years have been completed for the M365UK. But to the attendees, a warm welcome to you. We're joined by my good friends, Jasper Oosterveld from the Netherlands. And welcome, Jasper. I know Jasper's spoken at M365 UK before. I think it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think a couple of years. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And then we have a new speaker with us, Mads Christian Johansen from Denmark. Really appreciate for you joining us today. And welcome to M365 UK.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. And I think for the attendees, I think I see some new attendees there as well. So welcome to you as well. And so we have like around 2 hours with us today. It's a very informal format. We do a couple of sessions with a break in between of about 10 minutes. So, but for those of you who are new to M365 UK, I'm Chirag Patel. I organize and host M365 UK. Try to do on a monthly basis. Sometimes I get stretched a little bit, so it tends to be a couple of months or thereabouts. But I live and work in London, UK. I'm an independent consultant, trainer. Work generally with all things Microsoft 365 over the years, SharePoint, SQL Server, Office 365, and these days I also then extend that into Microsoft Viva as well as Microsoft Purview. So tend to work with a lot of UK partners, helping their customers deliver some projects, solutions, training as well. And also I like speaking at various events as well. And I think Jasper and I have spoken to, we often see each other like many other speakers, and it's always nice to also learn from these guys too, right? So I think so yeah, if you're looking to speak as well in the community, then reach out to me or Jasper or anybody else, and I'm happy to support you. But techchirag.com is the best way to get to me if I'm able to help. Been, like I mentioned, it's been about 4 years, so really appreciate it. Thank you for following M365 UK. We've got around over 1,200 members or so now, and usual channels, X, LinkedIn is the way to try and just follow the updates if I can share anything useful. YouTube.com/M365UK, that's where the recordings will be available, hopefully by later this week or sometime at the weekend. Sessionize.com is the platform I use to sort of request sessions, and it doesn't have to be anything 1 hour. Even if you want to present for half an hour, you're welcome to submit your session. I'm happy to also support you on that journey as well, and to choose topics or anything that you want to share, what you're working in your environment too. So always looking forward to the real world scenarios. All right. Okay, so back to our speakers. So Jasper, like I mentioned, he's a 10-year, I think 10 years MVP, which is great. I followed his blogs and articles over the years, and really kind of, I guess, like myself, specializing in Teams and SharePoint for MVP community-wise. But also, he's a consultant, and recently, well, I say recently, it's been a few years now, I think, you're specializing in data security and governance, right? And all things Microsoft Purview, because it just throws us with a lot of challenges, right? To look after our data in Microsoft 365. So Jasper's sessions are all about protecting and governing our sensitive data that lives with the use of the wonderful Microsoft Purview, and now with the AI and we have more opportunities where content's being generated from maybe secure, unsecure sources, who knows, right? So that's even a bigger challenge, right? So looking forward to this session. So yeah, without further ado, Jasper, over to you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I'll start sharing my screen. 1 second. And then I'll move this one over here. Yeah, this is all good. So let me start. So for anybody wondering, this is real. This is not a background. I get a lot of questions, but I live in Amsterdam, and so space is limited. So I was working in my son's bedroom for I think 2-3 years, and he's getting older, so he wants me to leave. So we got a roof extension, and so this is where I am now. So my wife picked out this lovely wallpaper. So I get a lot of questions. Is that real? Yeah, it's real. Well, enough about that. As Chirag introduced me, I work mainly with Microsoft 365 and data security. So I work as a consultant for a company called Rubicon. Actually, just started working there since 1st of March. And hopefully this summer I can be for 11 years an MVP. And as mentioned before, I live in Amsterdam with my wife, 2 kids, and our dog. But that's enough about me. So what I want to do, don't type this in yet. I want to try something. I would like to
need to see your screen, I think. All I'm always seeing is, I'm seeing a black screen. I'm not seeing it.
Okay, let me try again. 1 second.
I could see it here though.
Yeah, okay.
It disappeared. Okay, let's try again.
Yeah, try again.
There it is. I can see it. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. No worries. So what I want to do, I'll go to Mentimeter. I want to do a little poll. So what I will do, I click on present. And and at the top, you should see the menti.com. And then if you can use that code, you should be able to start answering this question. So I'm just interested. This is a little bit fingers crossed to see if it works. So if you could go to it and enter the code, you should see this question. And then, we should see some results popping up. So I hope it works. So give it like 10 seconds to a minute. Is it working? Yeah, here we go. Perfect. Phew. Although it gave me a warning that I have the free version that I'm nearing my limitation of responses, so see how it goes. Scary, yeah, that's a good one. Definitely can be scary in the beginning. Yeah. Okay. 4 or 5. Lackluster, Yeah, this is problematic. This is not. I always like to do this because this doesn't surprise me because it's a very. It can be a difficult topic to tackle and introduce within an organization. So what I'll do now, I'll go to the next one. So I'm curious if anybody here is already using Copilot from Microsoft 365. It's relative. Okay, 2. Yeah. Okay. What I often see, you don't have to answer it, is the most people answer yes are often people like me who work for like a Microsoft system integrator will often get these things first. But this is good to see. So a lot of people are using it. So that's awesome. So let's go to the last one. And then I'll stop bothering you with doing stuff. So for people out there, I'm curious what kind of Purview solutions you're using. I know there are a lot more, but otherwise it gets too long. So I'm just focusing on these 4 for now. Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting to see the communication compliance. That's one it's not relatively new, but it's not one that's used a lot. But the first 2 are definitely the ones that always come up high because they're relatively easy between brackets to introduce. So this is good to see. Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. So now you can now listen again. You won't have to do anything. So let's go here. Yeah. So we've done this. So why do you need data security, especially in an AI-driven world? So I think this all looks very familiar to all of us. We all have multiple devices. Especially since the pandemic, we work at multiple locations. So this is of course great, right? It makes us more productive, but it does come with risks, especially also now in combination with the rise of generative AI. ChatGPT basically exploded this whole space. I don't have the numbers, but I believe within 2 months or something, they reached like 100 million users or something like that. So something that never has happened before. I sometimes use it as well. It's definitely nice for inspiration purposes, but this has become more and more popular. So definitely what we see now is that, I hope this works. I know it's silly, but Microsoft is full in on Copilot, and that definitely you could see that in the build keynote. I'm not gonna. This is a little silly recap. It's 5 minutes. We're not doing 5 minutes, but I think after 1 minute you get the gist.
Fantastic to be
Let's
back
see if we can
here
turn
at
this on.
Microsoft Build. The first is Microsoft Copilot, Copilot plus PCs, Windows Copilot Runtime, Windows Copilot Library,
Hey, Copilot, how's it going?
Copilot apps, GitHub Copilot.
So I'll stop it. But this is literally 4.5 minutes of nothing else than the word Copilot. So you see that Microsoft's very serious about this. And I've now started working for a large insurance company, like 8,000 people, and they're also now ready to start using it. So you see more and more organizations are getting ready to use AI in some shape or form. Copilot is fantastic, right? It really is. It can be your AI assistant. So we will focus around the Microsoft 365 stuff, so Office and Teams. And it really is a combination of the large language models. In combination, and that's what makes it powerful, is your data through the Microsoft Graph with the apps from Microsoft 365. And of course, you're also using the knowledge from the internet. And the last one is important because this is where a lot of organizations get a little bit scared. And that's why Microsoft has their AI principles. And I'll focus more on the right side. And that means that your data is your data, right? It's from you. So again, you put some trust in Microsoft, but I believe, their whole offering stands or falls with trust. So your data is not being used to train those OpenAI foundation models without permission. I haven't done it, but there are ways to allow that. But by default, that's always closed. That said, you need to you need to start using tools like Microsoft Purview to make sure your data is secured and that you're compliant. Because what will happen, and we'll see that in a little bit later, is that especially with Copilot, people will discover more sensitive data. And of course, they need to have access to the data, but not everybody can seize what they have access to, right? But it becomes a lot easier to expose that information through Copilot. So that's why it's even more important to do something with data security. And again, we saw that in that first question that people said scary, difficult, and that is true because there are definitely some challenges. And one of them is really finding a good balance between security and productivity. What you want to prevent is that you lock everything down and people, for example, can't even share files externally. Because what will happen is that people get frustrated and they'll find other ways around it. So it's very important you find a good balance between these two, being secure, but also making sure people are still productive. And of course, what we see these days, there's a lot more, not only internal threats, like people by accident or on purpose leaking data, but there's also still a lot of malware attacks, right? Or ransomware attacks. And I think last year, for example, Sony, I'm a gamer, so this is why I know it, but Sony had a big data leak with one of their studios. And they said you can pay up millions or we'll expose all the data. Now, they didn't pay. I think that's the wise thing to do. But again, what they leaked were all new games, for example. So this is a very serious situation that happens more and more often. And especially with AI, and as I talked about it briefly, people will see more and more sensitive information. And you also want to know, what do they do with it? Are they using that within AI? Are they maybe copying sensitive information to ChatGPT or one of the competitors? You really want to have some good insights around that. So that's something I will talk about later today as well. And last but not least, there are also regulations, right? And there's more and more of these, and existing ones are always being modified. Now, of course, I talk to a lot of customers. They all say this makes sense, but I don't always have time for it. I see the importance, but first I have to do other stuff. And that's been the case for a couple of years now. But what I do see is, especially with AI and Copilot, is that this is a really good trigger to actually now start implementing data security with Purview. Because if you don't do anything, there are risks like fines. And I'll show you an example in the Netherlands. But what I think is worse is reputational damage, that your organization is in the news with a data leak that could have been prevented. That's something you don't want. That can also lead to loss of trust by, for example, consumer-oriented companies, right? And in the worst case scenario, that could lead to bankruptcy. It doesn't happen a lot, but there definitely has happened before in the past. So these are just some examples. These are in Dutch, so I won't bother you too long with it. But let me see what it is. At the right bottom, it talks about how a hospital in the Netherlands got like almost €500,000 fine because people had unauthorized access to patient files, right? So fines do happen, but I think the other ones are worse. There's a lot of data leaks from marketing companies who have marketing tools. They got hacked. Millions of data from Dutch people, or just you can buy it now in the dark web, for example. So this is terrible for your organization if you end up like this in the news. So you, within your organization, if you're a consultant working for clients, you really have to ask them 3 crucial questions. Does the organization know what type of sensitive information it has and where it's located? We'll talk later about examples what sensitive information is. Most of them have an idea or they know, but they really don't always know where it's exactly located. They just don't know that. Do you have any control over this data? If it's shared internally, but also externally, right? Are you monitoring this? Are there review processes in place, for example? And last but not least, do you at all protect your sensitive data in all environments? So we focus on Microsoft 365, but you can also have data, for example, in Azure, right? So most organizations, they will have to answer no. So that really offers you a good opportunity to really start working with data security with Purview. So if we talk about Purview, I focus on my left side, so the risk and compliance. So that's everything revolved around data that for compliance and security risks. The right side is more the data governance side of things. And that's really aimed at data in Azure, SQL. So that's something I don't focus on, but definitely you have a lot of options to make sure your data is secured in those environments as well. So for today, we'll focus on a couple of these services on the risk and compliance side of things. Again, I get a lot of customers, again, I said before, they understand, but they often say, I don't even know where to start. Like, for example, yesterday, Microsoft did a presentation at that insurance company, and that question came up as well. Like, where do we start? Like, we understand why it's important, we need to do something, but where do we even start? So my advice would be to first start with a workshop with your stakeholders, and I will dive into depth in each of these points. Then you also need to do a data risk check. And last but not least, of course, you can do your implementation. So let's dive into this. So the first step is a workshop with stakeholders. So stakeholders can be a security officer, your CISO, IT manager, information manager, maybe people from the business side of things. And what you do, you bring them together and you start defining your classification and protection policy. Now, what is this? Well, classification is often, what I often see is 3 different type of classifications. You have the public side. So that means the data that is classified as public can be shared externally, right? That's the purpose of the data, and there's no breach of confidentiality. Then you have general, and again, that's often the standard classification you start with while working in a company. And that information, like an email or Word document, or even this PowerPoint presentation, that can be shared externally. But it can also happen that there is information in there that could cause a potential breach, right? It doesn't always have, that doesn't have to be the case, but the potential is there. And then the last one is confidential. So that's confidential internal. So for example, if you work at Microsoft, confidential internal is only allowed to be seen by Microsoft employees. But you can also classify it for an external organization or a select group of people who are, for example, your partners. But that information should really only be shared and classified for that specific group of people. And then after you've done that, you connect your protection policy to it. Mentioned before, public, there's no protection, right? I classify this presentation as public. I can share it with all of you. It's fine. There's no problem, right? You can just open it and you can reshare it as well if you want to. With general, I advise to don't protect it, because what will happen, let's say everybody in your organization by default has the classification general, and you protect it. You say, okay, this information is now automatically protected and can only be seen and used by my colleagues. But let's say you share a lot of externally, those people are not able to open your presentation or your email, so they will become unworkable. So in that case, I always advise look at confidential. So create a confidential internal classification, right? So that's automatically protected for everybody who works internally or externally. And then the person who's classifying this information as confidential external, he or she can determine the type of rights. Can that person only view, or can he also edit, for example? So how does that translate to what they call sensitivity labels? You have your public and your general. So those are two labels you can choose from. And then you can also have the confidential internal, external. But the tricky part with external is that you need to have a Microsoft account to decrypt that the data that has the confidential external label. So that sometimes people don't have that. They have like an Apple ID, for example. So what you can do in that case is that you create a separate label called confidential anyone, and then you say not protected. You can of course change the anyone word, that's totally fine. But with this, there's no protection, but people do see, hey, this is confidential, but it's not protected. So that still gives you a good classification that people are aware of, right? I'm not saying this is the best solution, but if there are cases that the external one doesn't work, this is the one to use. Microsoft uses that as well internally. So once you've done that, you also have to look at your retention policy. So for example, you need to look at your data and you need to look at the information lifecycle, right? We always create information, we use it, we store it somewhere, and then eventually we share it internally, externally. But for some type of information, for example, resumes, yeah, you need to archive it or even destroy it after a certain amount of time. I believe in the Netherlands, and don't pinpoint you this, if somebody submits a resume and you don't hire them, I believe you're obligated by law to, it's mandatory to delete that resume, maybe after 3 months or something, right? So that's something you need to know, right? You need to be aware of what information do we have and what is the life cycle around archiving and destroying it. So what you could do, and this is very simple, of course, you could create then retention policies or retention labels. So for example, data automatically gets a retention policy that it needs to be kept for a year, and then after a year, people can delete it if they want to. Or it's kept for a year, so you can't delete it. But after the year, for example, you can delete it, but after a year, it's automatically deleted, right? And this is very simple how I present it now, but it can be a little bit more complex in the real world, right? But again, that's what you need to determine. So what is our classification and protection policy, and what is our retention policy? Then you also need to look at sensitive information. Well, again, on the left side, I included the usual suspects, right? Sorry, the first one is BSN. That's basically the Dutch version of a social security number. So you have that in the UK as well, but you can have a passport number, an IBAN number, a physical address, a home address. These are the most generic versions of sensitive information. But that's something you need to define with the stakeholders. But you also have organizational sensitive information, right? Let's say you work with a hospital, right? They'll have medical information. Let's say you work with the Justice Department. They'll have criminal records, for example. Now, et cetera, and et cetera. So especially the right one, you really need to define, okay, what are the properties of, for example, customer information? Do we have a customer ID? Right? How do I recognize that this is sensitive information related to customer information or medical information, right? How do you do this? Well, talk to your stakeholders, right? Go to departments that have certain processes that create information. Ask them, is this information sensitive, right? Is there a risk if this gets shared with unauthorized people? And also think about, okay, what will happen if this is accidentally or on purpose a data breach? Is like those risks I shared? Do we have to pay a fine, maybe, or are we getting reputational damage? That also helps you determine what's sensitive and what's not. Regulations, of course, and also Purview. So Microsoft Purview has a long list because it's worldwide. I think they have around 300 types of sensitive information you could use for inspirational purposes. Right? If I look for the Netherlands, I get a list of like 6 or 7 or 8 items, and that I can use, for example, within this workshop. But how do you detect sensitive information? Well, the very standard one is sensitive information types. So again, it can be an IBAN number or a passport number, and Microsoft has defined this, and in the definition, it has a configuration, how it's recognized. So for example, with keywords, or an X amount of numbers that are being used. You can also work with trainable classifiers. So by using those, you look more at the category of documents, HR documents, finance documents, and those trainable classifiers recognize as parts out of documents and then classify it as, for example, HR or finance. Exact data match is really aimed at sensitive information that's in databases. Document fingerprinting is a little bit of a misleading title because it has nothing to do with fingerprints, but this is really aimed at templates. So for example, standardized HR documents for new employees. You can use that template of a document to recognize sensitive information. And last but not least, this is basically SharePoint Premium. That's the evolution or the follow-up or rebranding of SharePoint Syntax. That also has features in there to recognize sensitive information in documents that are being stored. So last one, regulations. I mentioned it before. I have a couple examples. I think most of them are related to the EU. So I don't know how much is applicable to the UK, but I'm 100% certain that you have your own specific regulations as well. So again, you need to look what regulation applies to my organization or my customers. Once you've done that, I advise to start with a data risk check. Now, what is that? Well, you really look at existing data in your Microsoft 365 environment. You have a couple of ways of doing this. So let's say you're already using a Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'll show you that you now have an AI hub that's in public preview, if I'm correct, in your Purview Administration Center. So let me go here. So if I go here, you will see here, AI Hub Preview. So if I click on it and go to Analytics, what Microsoft is doing really nicely for a while now is giving you get started points. So you can click on here and then you can see, okay, what do I need to do to properly start using, in this case, the AI Hub, right? So again, here I get some recommendations. So I can see the amount of interactions in Copilot with sensitive data. So this gives me some ideas what is going on in my environment. This is my own MVP environment, so it's very boring. So it's just me testing things. But at least if this is your big organization, this gives you some really good analytics. This one is empty because I don't have a managed device, but otherwise this will be working as well. And here I can see, hey, what kind of sensitive data is being used? So for example, the sensitive information type full names, medical terms, diseases apparently, and this is one I created myself. This is a fictional product within a company called Contoso, right? And that's the one I use for demo purposes. So if you're already using Copilot, definitely start looking into the AI Hub. You have policies. So these are policies related to AI using Copilot for certain services. So for example, DLP, communication compliance, and insider risk management. And I'll show you a couple later on. Activity Explorer, the Activity Explorer is not new, but this one is really aimed and enhanced with AI features. So for example, if I click here, I can do the dates. So let me go back 2 weeks, do apply. I, for example, can look, okay, what sensitive information type is being used? So if it works correctly, I here have the Contoso product line. So I can click on it, apply, and this allows me to zoom in in all the interactions in Copilot around this sensitive information type, right? You can see it here as well. So this is one I really recommend. If you're already using Copilot, recommend start using it. If you don't yet, definitely take a look at the analytics and the policy part. We'll go to the next one. I won't go back in the slide deck. It's kind of silly. So the next one is DLP. So data loss prevention. So data loss prevention really allows you to detect sensitive information and how it's being used. Are people storing it in the OneDrive? Are they sharing it externally? And it gives you the option to also protect it. So you can detect sensitive information and then, for example, block people and then sharing it externally. But before you do that, it's good to enable it and just use a monitoring policy. So if I go here and I go to data loss prevention and I go to policies, I have, for example, created a policy that looks at GDPR around SharePoint and OneDrive. So it looks where, for example, a social security number is being used. So again, depending on your type of organization and your requirements, you can create a policy that looks at sensitive information, but doesn't do anything. Make sure there's no actions, right? It's just pure monitoring. And what will happen is once you've done that, I advise to let it run for like 2 to 4 weeks. And then you can use the Activity Explorer again. Again, this one is aimed at DLP, where the other one was aimed at AI interactions. So when this is done, you will be able to, again, select a date. So let's go back 2 weeks. And then I can say the activity in this case is DLP. Yeah, here you go. So no, okay, I don't know why this is not working. So what I'll do filters, that's fine. And I'll select policy here, click on apply. And in the policy, I should be able to select my DLP policy. No, okay, no, it's okay. It's not doing what I want, but it's totally fine. At least it gives me the nice interactions here. So I can see, for example, who is storing passport numbers in his or her OneDrive. Right, I worked for a building corporation, and they had a policy that said people who work for us are not allowed to store the social security numbers in the OneDrive. So what we did, we let this run for 4 weeks, and then we saw quite a lot of results where people were storing the type of information in their OneDrive. So this gives your organization a lot of good insights in what is going on around working with sensitive information. So let's go back to here. So now if I go to the third one, in theory, you could also use audit, right? So audit, again, allows you to look more into depth if what people have done with information within your organization. So if I go over here, I'm not going to show all the features, but again, you can do the date range, you can zoom in at specific people, sites, and certain activities. But now by default, you also have activities related to Copilot. So if I type in Copilot here, sorry, nope, it's always difficult to type. Here we go. You already see a couple of selections showing up. So again, Power Platform has Copilot activities I can look for. But if I go down, this is the one that's now available. So I can look at interacted with Copilot. I can search, and then the result will be displayed here. So this will allow you to really zoom into certain activities around Copilot for specific sites, for example. Go back to the slide, go to the fourth one. And this one I really like. This is communication compliance, and that's the word kind of says what it does. It checks for data risks around communication stuff. For example, emails or chat in Teams, and now also Copilot. So if I go back here and I go to communication compliance, where are you? You're over here. And what's also important to know, you see me opening everything, right? It's because I have permissions for everything. In your organization, you can really specify what somebody is or isn't allowed to do. So you could give somebody specific permissions only for communication compliance and not for one of the other services. So you have a lot of option there to fine tune that. So if I go to policies, you will see there's a policy called Copilot for Microsoft 365 interactions. So if I select this one and I edit it, you can see how I configured it. So again, you can specify users or groups. You can also exclude people. And here you select the people who review findings of this policy. We'll show you after this. So we go to next. Here I just select for now Copilot for Microsoft 365, but you can see you can do more locations. And then here, of course, you have to determine the communication direction. You have some options there as well. But here I look for this fictional product, right? The DG2000. It's highly sensitive because it's brand new, and you want to know who is talking about this product. So this is what it's looking for. You can also use OCR for recognizing the sensitive information in images. Be aware, there are some costs related to it. It's not too bad, but I think it goes per 1,000 or something. Every 1,000 scans, you need to pay a certain amount of money. So definitely look into that. But if I now go to next, I think this is done. So I close it for now. And then if I, let me see if I can go to alerts. No, sorry, I have to go here. This one. Yeah, here we go. I think this is the one. So what I want to do now, I have the policy. There we go. This is awesome. So now it's looking for interactions in Copilot related to the DG2000. So for example, here, I'll go to this one. So you see it's Copilot in Word. You can see that here you see it. So you can see that this word is being used. So that's why this policy is triggered, right? So what this allows me to do as a reviewer is, for example, see, okay, you know what, this is fine. This is resolved. This is allowed, right? So I can say, fine, no problem. Click on resolve. And now what will happen is, it says it here, it will remove it from this list and will move it here to resolved. So I can also look at a different one. I'll use, let me try this one for a second. And then I can also say, if you have Copilot for security, you can get a summary. You can also, let me see here, I can also give it a tag. So these tags you can create yourself, or if you can use the default ones from Microsoft. So I can cancel for now, and the tag will appear here. I also have the option to escalate it. So let's say this is a serious data breach. I can escalate it to, for example, HR or a security officer. The investigation one, that's part of e-discovery. That's also a service within Purview. That's really aimed for lawsuits. So it allows you to create a case, and that case then looks for all interactions for one person, for example, in email, in Teams, in OneDrive, and you can also log that data. Okay, it goes very far. So, and the goal is you can also, for example, this is which one I want to show you. I don't know why this is not working, but you have an option called, let me see if I try a different one. You have an option to send somebody a notification. And I quickly want to show you what it looks like because I think it's pretty fun. So let me go to this one quickly. So if I go to my email, so let's say you notice that somebody used the DG2000 in Copilot, and you want to make sure the person is aware that this is happening and that it's sensitive information. You can send an email, and you can also automate that by using Power Automate, and you get something similar than this. It's in Dutch, but I'll translate. Look at this. This is perfect. Now you see, this is an email template I just created, very simple, that says, hey, I'm seeing that you're using sensitive information about this and that in Microsoft 365. Please be cautious, right? So this is a simple example, but this, again, the reviewers are able to do this. So this is pretty cool. So if I go back here, if I go now to policies, this is just a default policy you can create for yourself. And there's some other ones as well. For example, if you want to make sure people don't harass other people, for example, you can do that too. Right? So this is a really cool feature in Purview. You do need an E5 or something related to E5 license for this, unfortunately. But that's often the case. All the fun stuff in Microsoft 365 costs money, a lot more money than normal. So that's there's nothing that we can do about that. Content search, again, the word kind of says what it does. It searches for content. So for example, you can say, I want to look for a passport number in all SharePoint sites, or in all OneDrives, right? And then what it will do, it will look for it and then give you a similar report back like this. This one is for Exchange, but it's very similar to SharePoint and OneDrive. You see an estimate amount of items because although it recognizes sensitive information, it can also be false positives. Like, hey, I think it's a passport number, and you look into files like, no, it looks like it, but it's not. So that's why it's an estimate, and you always have the option to mark something as like, hey, this is not a passport number. So then the system remembers that, and it really improves the recognition mechanism, right? Again, this gives you some good opportunity to, again, gather some insights. You can also export it. So again, you can use this in Excel for reporting purposes as well. So I go to the last one, the compliance manager. So if I go back to administration center and I go over here, all the way to the top, you have something called the compliance manager. And by default, it gives you a score based at the data protection baseline from Microsoft. And it uses some elements from a couple other regulations. And it gives you a score. And probably if you haven't done much with security and compliance, it will be a low score. And the Microsoft score is always pretty up to par. It's never 100%, but it's close. But that said, you don't have to worry that much because it just gives you a good indication of where you are now and where you can work towards. So what you can do, you can go to assessments. I believe, again, depending on the license you have, you can select 3 what they call premium assessments. So for example, I did the NIS2, it's from EU, but if I go right here, maybe I can find one from the UK. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. So again, I just typed in UK. So for example, I can select one of these. Now you still have your own version of GDPR. I can select it, I can save it, and do cancel for now. And what we'll do, if I, for example, open this one, so pretend this is the UK GDPR, it scans the environment at all the type of the items of the regulation in there. So again, it gives you a good, where are you as an organization, right? What are your improvement actions? So if I go, for example, to improvement actions, it gives you, advice like, hey, I don't know, just open this one, for example. Click on it, and it gives you information, what it is, and what you can do to actually be compliant at, for example, security-related incidents. You can, what you need to remember, the testing is often manual, so you need to assign this task to somebody, and that person then needs to upload the evidence. Somebody checks it, you mark it as complete, and that's how your score increases, right? Be aware, Microsoft will never say, hey, you're now compliant to GDPR. That's never going to happen. They just want to give you the tools to get there. And then like external companies can help you with that. But really, this is a great way to really see where am I as an organization related to the regulations I have to comply with. Okay, go back to the slides now. So implementing, I always advise to start small. Don't start organization-wide. Really start small with, for example, one department or one team that you know that has a lot of sensitive information. So information protection is a really good one to start with. So what you can do, for example, is if I go back here, and let me close this one for now, because what will happen is, for example, I use Copilot in Teams, and I asked a summary for a product. Now you can see it's great, right? It gives me a nice summary, but you already can see here there's some references. And if I browse over this one, you can see that this says confidential internal. So again, this should be a trigger for me as an employee, like, hey, this information here is confidential. So I should be careful what I do with it so that I don't just copy and paste it internally or externally, right? So this is this again is great and gives you also a nice icon here. Again, you see like, hey, this information is classified, but how can you do this automatically, right? With information protection. So if I go to Word, so let's say I have a new Word file in my OneDrive. I have my sensitivity. These are the classification labels are called sensitivity labels in Microsoft 365. You can see my default is general. And with information protection, I can manually increase it, right? Say confidential internal or lower it. But what's really awesome is that you can also do it automatically. So let's say in my OneDrive, I say, can I have a summary of the DG2000? And I mentioned before, the DG2000 is like a fictional product, and only the project members are allowed to work with content related to this, to the DG2000. So let's say I do generate. And you saw the default label was general. What will happen now, relatively soon, is that you will see that the sensitivity will be increased because I'm using sensitive information, here we go, that has its own classification label called confidential GT2000. And what I've done, you can stop, it's fine, stop. So what I've done, I have that sensitivity label, and I enabled an auto labeling feature that looks for the sensitive information type called DG2000. If that's detected, that label should be automatically applied. And the sensitive information type, I kept it really simple. I just use keywords. So if this keyword is being used, or without and I call this whatever, the space, whatever, and the system knows, hey, this is sensitive information related to this. Okay, I detect it, and then I'm applying the label automatically. You can also use regex, for example, and some other options as well. But again, this makes life a little bit easier also for your employees, because now this document in this case is automatically classified with the corresponding label, and it's not protected. Yeah. So if I go back to one more thing, what's also really nice with information protection, if I go to Teams, and I have this dedicated team, and I go to Files, and let's say I upload a new file, click on Files. Let me just pick one, doesn't really matter. Select this one. Yep. Now, should start uploading it, and if everything works, there we go, try again. Didn't click. Should be more firm with my clicks. So what will happen now, and you see it's still empty, but what it will do once the caching is fixed, so let me go to SharePoint. I think it works a bit faster here. So let me refresh it a couple times. But what will happen eventually is that automatically this label will be applied. And how does that work? Well, if you have the E5 license or something similar, you can click on here, you go to library settings, and then you will see that this library has a default label, the confidential GG2000. So that makes life a lot easier for people within this project team, because they don't have to think about it. They just work with their files, and it's automatically classified with the corresponding sensitivity label in this case. So if I go back here, let me see where I am. Perfect. So something that's important to know, this mechanism with the default document library label and stuff that, for example, already has a label. So again, these slides will be shared, but you can see what will happen if you have an existing label. Will it be overridden, or not correct English? Will you override it with the default document library label? Because this is not always the case. So if I go to DLP, again, I showed you what you can do with, sorry, I go one back. I showed you how you can, where you have the policies and how you can monitor activity. What I won't show you today is stuff I've shown it before, is, for example, you can block chat messages. So let's say somebody's talking about the GG2000 in a team that's not that dedicated project team, you can block it, right? It's automatically blocked. You can, for example, prevent documents being shared externally. But if we look specifically at AI, what you can do, and this is just a standard GIF from Microsoft, you can have a policy that monitors sensitive information. And if somebody tries to copy and paste it, in this case, this was called BART, I think it's now Gemini from Google, you can block it. You can do this for ChatGPT as well, but this really helps you to prevent sensitive information being copied and pasted in an external generative AI engine. If we look at data lifecycle management, and that refers to the retention policy and labels, right? The preserving types of content and also maybe deleting it after X amount of time, days, months, or years. That's also now extended to Copilot interactions. So if you go to your retention policy, right, it's only with policies, not with labels, your retention policy, you will see you have this box. So you can set a policy on retaining and or deleting certain Copilot interactions, right? Maybe those DG2000 that you say after a year, we want to delete any reference in Copilot to this project. Okay. I think it's time now for me to wrap it up. I think I'm almost pretty spot on time. Again, please reach out to me if you have any questions around this topic. The easiest thing is just to do LinkedIn. Just connect with me and ask me a question in DM. Totally fine. I don't mind. I added some resources, and yeah, I don't see you, but I just want to thank you for listening in, and I hope you found it useful, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the other session as well, very much. Thank you.
Hey, that's awesome, Jasper. Appreciate that. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thank you.
It's always hard to fit in, isn't it? Because there's so much Microsoft Purview has on offer, and going through those demos. So that was really good, and picking out those nuggets of co-pilots, and yeah, good, excellent.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks for
no worries.
doing that.
I'm with my daughter, so I have to go. I have to make dinner.
You better do
But-
that.
Yeah.
So for those of you who's joining us, thanks very much. We've had a session from Jasper regarding protecting, governing your sensitive data in the AI-driven workplace. So hopefully you can tune in for the recording on that one if you did miss one. But here we will go ahead and with Mads from Denmark, who's joining us. Appreciate that, giving up your time here, Mads, and your sessions obviously about the enterprise, not enterprise, endpoint privilege management of devices. Too many EPMs, it could be a project management portfolio in the old days. So yeah, I think it's another area because it does cover off the spectrum of M365 technologies, and more often than not, the focus is always on the information and the content. So endpoint are just as equally important. Certainly when I do the assessments, that's one area I go into, looking around what's in the endpoint and all the configurations and for profiles and so forth. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Mads. Take it away.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'll try and share my screen here. And you're absolutely correct about the name. There's a lot of EPMs by now. I think there's a CyberArk. They also have a product, and I'm not sure it's referred to as EPM, but let me see if I can present my PowerPoint slide deck this time. Let's see if it's working. So for those of you already aware, there's already a lot of products in this space. There was a problem displaying this content. I actually had this error a few weeks ago. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's because I'm signed into so many different accounts in my office, so I'm going to have to try and share my screen again.
Yeah, no problems. No problems.
Let's see. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. Let's see.
Looking good.
Like this.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
We're going to try that. Okay, awesome. I'm going to try to do it like this. Usually I have my laser and all that stuff, but okay. Awesome, guys. Yeah, and we just talked about it. There's so many products in this space by now, a lot of EPM. So Microsoft just came about with his Intune suite about last year. They also wanted to finally get into this space for various reasons. But yeah, let's get back to that one. Thanks for joining me, everyone, and thanks for having me, Chirag, to let me spread the word about EPM and well, in part Intune Suite. A bit about myself. I'm partnered with someone called Apento. It's a small company in Denmark, mainly for freelancers. We mainly work in endpoint management, Azure infrastructure, and also in the space like Purview, data compliance, and all that stuff. I've been doing endpoint management for 8 years. Before that, I was basically a server dude, break and fix server dude. And, something like, hey, my server is broken. And I'm like, have you tried turning it off and on again? Okay, it works now. Something like that. Vastly simplified, but yeah. I have a lot of certifications. I put the number in there. Yeah, I have a lot of certifications, and it's really a lot of work, too much work. But yeah. Anyways, I also have a blog if you're interested to hear about endpoint management stuff. I mainly blog about Windows, but I'm also getting more into the Mac space because, well, let's face it, when you have an MDM and you're also you're managing data and security and all that stuff, we're getting more and more Macs into this space as well. Yeah, that's a bit about myself. So a bit about the Intune suite that I mentioned before. So that's a new suite of products that Microsoft announced. I think 2 years ago, and most of the some products they were released last year. The remaining products were kind of just released in a staggered approach this year. But basically, it's meant to replace all your third-party products you use today in this space. So like Patch My PC or like TeamViewer, or you have like a third-party cloud PKI solution that distributes certificates. So just to can I do this? Oh, I couldn't. Anyways, yeah. Just so the enterprise app management, so that's basically your app catalog. So you can have apps a la carte. So you basically go into this app catalog and say, want this app? Great, you have it already, so you don't have to spend time testing it. There's no auto patching yet. So for those of you that use Patch My PC or all the other product Nights, there's no auto patching yet. It will come at a later stage. Advanced analytics, that's kind of your all your anomalies and all that stuff. If you have a large amount of blue screens all of a sudden, or a spike in memory usage on all your devices, advanced analytics will kind of help you in a single pane of glass decode all that stuff to show you, okay, there's a problem here. And then we have your remote help. That's basically your replacement for TeamViewer. So to remotely assist your users. And Mac support was just added recently, so it also supports Mac now. And then there's your cloud PKI, which is by far the best product in this suite that they have to offer right now. EPM is also good. You're gonna see in a bit, but cloud PKI is basically super nice. So you can provision a PKI infrastructure with a few clicks. And basically, so for those of you who don't know, PKI is a public key infrastructure. So that's to issue certificates to your devices in your organizations, for instance. To go passwordless or to connect to Wi-Fi or VPN and all that stuff. And I've configured a lot of PKIs in my time, and well, trust me, it's a clickathon. You can usually, sometimes depending on the customer, it can be a few days, but also up to a month configuring a cloud PKI. So with that new offering in the Intune suite, you have a cloud PKI in a few minutes, believe it or not, and then you're ready. And lastly, endpoint privilege management, which is Microsoft's endpoint privilege management. Because if you go in and Google it now, there's a lot of endpoint privilege managements, like CyberArk, as I mentioned before. And endpoint privilege management is what I'm going to talk about now. Before I do that, I just want to also set the stage a bit. Why do we need EPM and what it's all for? So a PAM solution, privileged access management for endpoints, is basically to bridge the gap between a non-privileged and privileged user. So you probably good few years ago, there was a large push to, you don't need to be local administrator on your device anymore with all the ransomware attacks and all that stuff. So easy, we removed the local admin rights, right? The problem is when some companies did that, they became like inundated with a lot of help desk tickets to install various stuff or install a printer and all that. Lots of different things, and developers as well. They needed to install a lot of different stuff on a daily basis. They just need to, with admin rights, change an IP address or change some system settings, and they can't kind of do that without admin rights. So we need to kind of have this. We need to have this tool that kind of bridge the gaps between being non-privileged and a privileged user. So a good PAM solution will empower end user productivity. It will let them install apps, settings, and printers and all that stuff that we allow them to. We can kind of craft policies that says these users can do this and these users can do that. Great. And a good PAM solution will also have an emphasis on security, auditing, and reporting, as you're going to see in a bit. Reporting is a bit lackluster right now in EPM. I'm going to have to admit that. I don't sugarcoat a lot. I'm very honest. I'm not a Microsoft shill. I am just really excited about the product. So And as I put there, it's plenty of third-party tools already in this space for many years, so you can't help but compare. But with that, I also have to say that Microsoft, they have kind of reinterpreted what a PAM solution for endpoints is. It's really security first. So they've had to make some design decisions that other PAM solutions, they've been gone down a different road. So when Microsoft does these things, they are also beholden to their own internal security policies and all that stuff. So what you're going to see now in a minute is just keep that in mind, that it's security first, and it's kind of reinterpretation of what a PAM is for those of you that already maybe are using a product now, that so you know how it works. And lastly, because I get this a lot when I go out to customers, Labs is not a good PAM solution. It's not a PAM solution at all, actually. Labs is meant as a break glass solution. So in case you lose access and you're completely locked out, you use Labs to kind of get back in, or maybe you can also use it for some one-time software install request, but it's really not initially what's it intended for. It's like break glass, but I have started to see some customers starting to use it for one-time install requests. But the problem with Labs is you don't really have the auditing and reporting, as I mentioned before. So I also wanted to get that off my chest, and I see this a lot. With that, Endpoint Privilege Manager is, like, as I mentioned before, it's like a fresh interpretation of a PAM solution, and bear in mind it was released April last year. It's very much version 1.0. Maybe 1.01 by now, and that's part of the Intune suite. You can only get it if you donate your unborn child and maybe your kidney. That's the public price, anyways. But trust me, the public price, if you have more than 1,000 users in your organization, you can talk to your account manager and you can get a discount. I'm not allowed to say more, but you can negotiate. Trust me on that. Don't be scared about the price you see on the web. The public price is like $10 or $13 for users, something like that. Just talk to your account manager about it, and they're also willing to do funding. They can get someone like me, a Microsoft partner, to help come in and initiate a proof of concept to how does this tool fit in your organization, and usually the Microsoft will actually pay a large part of that. Anyways, I digress. So as I also mentioned before, it's security first. It's kind of reinterpretation of what a PAM is. And it allows that end user productivity in a guarded environment. So that's super important when a user is allowed to elevate a process, that it happens in a secure manner. And you can configure the product however you like. You can have it go through an approval flow, which is called support approved now. You can also, like for developers, for instance, that usually what I use it for at my customers, because they're very difficult. For developers, you put them in an auto-approve rule. So basically, they don't have to get IT's approval every time they need to install something or change a system setting, all that stuff. And then you have your singular rules where you can craft a unique rule saying you can elevate this app and it can only do this on your PC, which is actually best practice. The best practice from Microsoft is just create a rule for each app that you allow to elevate. The problem with that, sometimes you have a lot of apps and you don't always have them packaged and available for your users. So I'll show you in a bit as well what that looked like, those rules. So yeah, and also create rules for each app for the best experience. And that's also to catch any auto updating applications and all that stuff. There's some stuff in there in a minute that I'm going to show you, that it's sometimes good to create a rule for each app to make sure that the EPM actually catches that app so it allows to elevate. Otherwise, the user is going to be stuck with that UAC prompt where they're trying to elevate the application. EPM does not integrate with UAC in Windows. It's two different components. And that's also why when you you see in the screenshot in the lower left-hand side, you see the extra button that they kind of added in the operating system. It doesn't work with run as administrator. Run as administrator is, well, basically UAC is a separate component of the operating system. So what they did, it's basically a separate application with that utilizes a driver with an MSIX extension, like an shell extension in Windows, that gives you that button, run with elevated access, which I'm going to show you in a moment, what that looks like and how to craft rules and all that stuff. So I want to show you so you can actually see it for yourself in action, and how easy it is to actually get started with using, and all the quirks that we have seen in the implementation at my customers. So we actually just had one customer today confirmed that they actually bought 19,000 Intune suites licenses in Denmark, which is absolutely huge. And it actually, the negotiations and the testing lasted for several months. So today was just today it was confirmed with our help and Microsoft help that they bought 19,000 Intune suite licenses, mainly also because they needed the EPM and the cloud PKI. So with that, I would like to show you how it works. And as I mentioned before to Chirag, I bribed the demo guard, so I hope this all works. I'm in a hotel room right now on hotel Wi-Fi, so I really hope this works. So let's see how this all pans out. So I just first want to show you the policies that I put into place. That's need to log into my demo tenant. Sorry about that. I should have done that before. So I just want to show you what it looks like in the Intune portal. Let's see. I'm just gonna confirm this one. Great. Continue. And with that, we are now in the Intune portal. So with everything endpoint management with Windows, most of the stuff you do, with management, most of it is in here. But sometimes, annoyingly, there's some other portals like the Admin Center and the Office portal where we can define separate policies. So, anyways, in the left-hand side, you have the endpoint security, and anything EPM related. You see endpoint privilege management right here. So I just want to show you what I did already in advance, because we don't have a lot of time and I can't, when we define new policies, we kind of have to wait for the policy to get down to the device. So, and a fun fact for the super duper nerds out there also into Intune is what they did with EPM. So this space in here, when you define policies in here and it goes down to your device, they actually created a completely new provider in the Windows operating system to send and receive those policies on the device. That is super quick. So actually, within a few minutes, the policies should should already be on the device. And the Intune team is actually planning to migrate everything regarding policies in Intune to that provider as well. Some of you you already know that it's called MMPC, and internally in Microsoft, they also refer to it as a dual enroll scenario, because you kind of have two different channels to send the policies down now, because this in here uses the MMPC channel to deliver policies. So that was a bit of a sidetrack, nerdy information. But as you can see here, I have defined two elevation settings policy. So what I've done here is the defaults. So the default response in EPM is, so when you enable it, the default elevation response, I just set it to not configured. So what that means is that it goes to the default, which is deny all requests. So when it's deny all requests, you can only elevate what you create rules for. I just want to show you that. So that's the default response. Unless you put it to one of these two, then you can have the default response. So anytime the user elevates anything, it will go to support approval, and then an admin has to approve it, or then it just requires user confirmation, which I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. And then there's your elevation rules. So your elevation rules is where you define what apps are the user, what are they allowed to elevate to administrator. So you can see I created three rules here already. Allow 7-zip on a file hash, allow dope reader signing cert, and allow VLC, which is an automatic rule. I'll come back to that one. So just opening the 7-zip elevation rule here. You can see that's the description, and then I put in user confirmed here. There's two other modes here. The automatic one, basically, you won't see any confirmation when you elevate. And then you have other option, which is validation, Windows authentication, and then business justification. So I don't know about you. That maybe you've already tried managing a PAM solution right now. But whenever I've implemented a PAM solution at my customers and we use business justifications, sometimes the stuff we get back, you have to write a reason to why you want the app. Sometimes the stuff that we get back it doesn't make sense. So usually I don't use it, because sometimes we get this back like, this is my PC, go away, and you can't really use it for anything. So so usually I don't use it, but if you're a really strict customer, you're high on security, okay, let's just take it. But some users, depending on who you are, they feel the PC they're on is their PC, and if they're not allowed to do something, you'll get some angry messages in that message box. Trust me on that. So for now I just chose Windows authentication. And here is a funny little one, which is really important to think about when you create these elevation rules. Child process behavior. So basically, this is to prevent the user just elevates some process and they leave it open and they have admin access. But a lot of installers, as some of you, if there's any software packaging nerds here on the call, you know that some installers, they spawn a lot of child processes. So usually, if you allowed an app that you want to install, you'll usually always choose allow all child processes to run elevated. The most secure is obviously deny all, and less secure and require rule to elevate. The default is deny all, so you won't be able to elevate any child process. But just keep that in mind if you want to go and trial this. Just remember to allow all child processes, otherwise things might break. Down here is the metadata for the file. And when you have a file hash elevation, you have to put in the file name and you have to put in the file hash. So the file hash is super easy to get. You just use a get file hash in PowerShell and then the file name, whatever. I don't have the file on my PC right now, but get file hash and then you get the file hash. That's the two required. You can also optionally put in more information in here if you want to create a super secure binding that gets its really strong assertion to the file that you want to elevate if you're scared about anything like spoofing or anything like that. Not that you can spoof a file hash, but coming back to that one in regard to certificate elevations, I just want to show you I put in allow Adobe reader, but it really is just allow Adobe, because what I did here is it's user confirm again. I actually did put in business justification, so I can just show you what it looks like. Allow all processes to run elevated, and here I have a certificate instead. So what I did here is I only imported the Adobe certificate. So kind of saying, okay, the users that gets this elevation rule, they can elevate any Adobe products they want to install. Because sometimes we want to trust the vendor. Okay, fine, they can go and install this product. It's fine. It can also be internal signing certificates. So if you have a lot of internal apps, you can sign these apps with a signing certificate, and you can go and create an elevation rule saying, yeah, you can run all of our apps as administrator through this elevation rule. The last one is kind of similar to 7-zip, except I just wanted to show the automatic elevation type as well. But with that, that's a lot of elevation rules. Just want to show you what it looks like from a user perspective. So here I have what you can pretend it's a laptop and it's a user, but yeah, you can see it's a virtual machine. So let's say the user wants to install 7-zip and, sorry, I forgot to do that. Great. Apologies, it's newly provisioned, and you want to go and download 7-zip. And we can go here and we download, so yeah, the 64-bit of 7-zip, and yeah. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong button. There we go. And again, so you can see when sometimes you can see the button. Sometimes it's really slow to populate. Sometimes we have gotten this a lot as well in our proof of concept that the customer I mentioned before. But if I right click again, there we go. You see, sometimes the button is a bit slow to appear, and just sidetracking a bit. If it doesn't appear at all, if it's completely gone, what you can do is just go to the EPM folder. It leaves a folder in here, And you can go to this EPM shell extension folder, and there's this MSIX. You can just double click it, and you hit reinstall. It happened on a very small amount of users. Just wanted to mention that in case you don't get the button at all. So just trying again, and I'll get an error now. I'll know it, but we're just gonna try. Okay, so you can see this. This is it. Just want to, for security reasons, you just want to confirm that you want to open this app as admin. Great. And I'm just gonna. It supports Windows Hello as well, of course. So I'm just gonna input my PIN here, and I'm gonna get an error, which is an annoying error, but I just want to show you. Oh, okay, I didn't get the error. Sorry about that. Because normally when you download files off the internet, you are supposed to unblock them, but maybe I get that on the next one. But as you can see here, I can now install 7-zip, and because of the elevation rule that I created. And just to show you, let's take any other app actually. Let's go and so you can see what happens if I just try to elevate PowerShell, because we didn't create a rule for that. You can see when I try to elevate anything that I didn't create a rule for based on also my elevation settings, I'm not allowed to do that. So it's only in this scenario, I can only elevate what I've created rules for. So also I can just show you Adobe Reader as well. Can go and download Adobe Reader. It's in Danish, I apologize, but it doesn't really matter. Adobe Reader. Great. Free version. And I'm telling you, this product, if you don't have one already and you remove local admin rights, this product will, at the very least, save you a bunch of time for one-time software install requests. Depending on the software, sometimes you can spend, like a service desk rep, you can spend like 1 hour, 2 hours. Depending on the app, it can really be time-consuming to help the user install apps. So this is super helpful that we can create these rules. So, and let's try again and create the run business. Yeah, again, I need this app. So you just see you have a small text field here that the user can use to kind of send this business justification as to why they need this app. And this is the error message that I want to show. Funny enough, it didn't appear on the last one. So basically, something went wrong. Great error message. Unable to elevate this app because it came from the internet on another computer. And okay, so they actually added this now. Learn more about why this file is blocked. But users doesn't click that button. Trust me, they'll just come to you and ask, why can't I elevate this app? What's going on? So what's going on is the default security policy in Windows, any apps you download from the internet, you need to unblock them. And we've asked the EPM team at Microsoft, can you please include a more descriptive error message as to why this error occurs? And apparently, it's the error message that they get, they fetch it directly from the Windows operating system, the Windows kernel. So that's something they can just change. But if you want to implement them EPM, just make sure that you get this one in a knowledge base article, and then it will be fine after a while. But you get a lot of these requests. Just want to show you this bit as well. And I need this app, and we should be able to elevate now. Yes, and now we can install Adobe Reader as well. Yeah, so the last thing, as you saw when I'm elevated apps, I get this like confirmation. If I want to elevate an app, there's also the automatic elevation, which is the one I showed in the beginning. That's kind of, so in Microsoft best practices, you should only use automatic elevations for legacy apps, like really old apps that doesn't support this way of elevating. But I've seen a lot of actually already other companies that are fiddling with EPM. They actually use automatic elevations for everything, because then the user doesn't get any confirmation of any sorts. They can just elevate it. So they think, it's really user friendly. But just want to get this. Sorry about that. I guess it's error again. Just want to mention that it is a Microsoft best practice to not use automatic elevations. Only use it sparingly and for legacy apps where required. And you can see here when I press run with elevated access, I don't get any prompt that do you really need to run this app as an administrator. And I can now go and install VLC as an administrator. So that's kind of a bit about the elevation rules. How am I doing for time? Great, still have some time. So I want to tell you a bit about the things that we kind of been fighting with the EPM team and my customer, which I mentioned earlier, um, the pain points. So the pain points, number one pain point that we got was, first of all, there's only one way you can elevate a file right now, and that's through File Explorer. So what I showed you, you can see File Explorer, right click, run with elevated access. The Run as Administrator button, which I mentioned in the beginning, is two different functionalities in the Windows operating system. So Run as Administrator, you can't use that if you're not administrator. So it is only that button, Run with elevated access, that allows you to elevate any apps. And if you want to try and like elevate apps from the start menu, you can't do that. You only have the Run as Administrator button. If you want to try and remove, apps from the installed apps, you can't do that either, because it requires administrator. You need that to bypass that USC prompt, as you can see here. But there's no elevate with EPM here, so you can't uninstall apps. There is some PowerShell and command prompt workarounds for this issue, but it's frustrating for someone that doesn't really know their way around these command prompts to go through these commands. And it's not all apps that follow the same way of installing stuff on Windows, so a command line doesn't actually always work. So that's the number one pain point that we have, that Microsoft is they're looking at. There is some NDA information I'm not allowed to share, but I can share that they are looking at the issue, and it will be fixed sometime. That much I can share. So I'm not sharing too much information here. Just clicking that away. So the second thing is obviously, especially for developers, mostly developers, not normal users. If we just tell them, when you right-click things, run with the elevated access button, press this button. But developers that's used to having local admin, so we stripped them of their admin and we gave them EPM instead. And a lot of them, they're really helpful. They want to help us implement the tool. But other developers, why does my Run as Administrator no longer works? What the heck, So we keep telling the you need to press the other button now. But I've used Run as Administrator for the past 20 years. Yeah, well, sorry, security and all that stuff. We need more security. Okay. So that's the second thing that we kind of gotten, believe it or not. So it can be frustrating, but this is more like user adoption. You can really, that's not like a serious issue. I just want to mention it as well, that is something we really ran into, that sort of like a non-problem. You just need to communicate clearly, this is the button that you need to press, and all that stuff. So the third thing is, which is really more like advanced, but I want to show you anyway. Actually, how can I show you this now? Because I only have one VM. So basically is when I elevate something, it runs in what we call the secure virtual account. So basically when a user elevates something, it doesn't elevate in the user's own context. But alas, I forgot to create an elevation rule for PowerShell. So how can I actually show you this now? I'm going to cheat, actually, because I'm on my laptop now. So I'm going to have to remote into my PC at home just to show you, because I want to show you this, what happens in the background in a PowerShell setting. Just 1 second here. Why is it not coming up? Because as I mentioned in the beginning of the call, what Microsoft did with this, it's like a fresh interpretation of a PAM solution, and it's security first. Why is it still syncing here? So it's security first. So it's super secure when you elevate stuff compared to other solutions on the market. Right now, it's actually the most secure. So that's good, right? But what makes it really secure is also what makes it the most frustrating to work with for developers. For all your one-time software requests and all that stuff, that's for that scenario, it works super good. But for your developers that need kind of this special access to their PC, sometimes they install stuff in their current user context, and when they want to elevate something, it doesn't. The program that you elevate is it doesn't know how to find the user's own files. and it looks like, there we go. It's just a bit slow now. So, okay. This is the first time I've done this, by the way. This is the first time I've done an EPM, an EPM session with through a TeamViewer. So it's only because I'm in a hotel room now, so that's why. So this is just a different user, but I know on this machine, if you noticed in the beginning, I have an allow all elevation policy. So basically, on this machine, I'm allowed to elevate anything on this PC. So if I elevate PowerShell here, I just want to show you what I'm talking about. And now that's not working. Interesting. Let's see. Okay, it doesn't seem to work now. Sorry, guys. Maybe I can show it some other way, actually. Because I just want to show you what that account looks like. Maybe I can actually do something else. Do like this. I'm just going to elevate with an admin. And we're going to try and log in here. And we're going to go to just improvising a bit here. So here's your user profiles. And this is what I want to show you. Just took a bit long. So this profile, this is what makes EPM super secure right now. And they had to do it this way. I'm telling you, there was no other way to build EPM other than doing it this way. But this is really a major problem with the product right now, because what happens when you elevate something, if you're a developer, you want to elevate your Visual Studio Code, you want to elevate your writer or whatever you're using as a developer, it elevates in that context, so the app can't see what's in the user's own folder. And this is especially really annoying for apps that leaves unique settings or stuff like that in the user's own home folder. Because when you elevate the app, sometimes it doesn't even work. The app doesn't even work. Actually, there was an earlier version of Visual Studio Code. When you tried to run it with EPM, it just didn't work at all. They just came up with an error because it couldn't find the settings for all the for Visual Studio Code in the user's context. And this like a virtual secure account, as they call it, it kind of broke things. So I just want to show you that. And there is some stuff coming up from Microsoft that would help alleviate some of that pain. But for now, that secure virtual account will not go away. And I don't know how much I'm allowed to share, actually, but I can share this. So there is some groundbreaking security changes coming to the Windows 11 operating system. That's gonna make it a bit easier for EPM to kind of to alleviate some of these issues. Yeah, so that there is something coming, but just keep in mind that this issue is there, and it might be a blocker for some, but for small amount of users, mainly developers and stuff like that. But normally, your one-time software install requests and all that stuff, that's really a great product right now. Yeah, so I think that's all I had now. So is there any questions, concerns? I see Chirag, sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'm really sorry. I only have one screen. So go ahead.
No, I'm good. I'm just looking through the questions to see if there is anything, but I don't see anything yet. But I think there was one actually. Any tips regarding good practice for the new changes to EPM, or rather the approach? I think some of it you covered, but would you mind just maybe extending that further?
Yeah. So, sorry. Go ahead.
If
you want to talk,
basically, yeah. If I'm allowed to ask a question, it's just like with the changes for EPM, a few people are struggling to adapt to the changes. So if there's is it like a good idea to where to start from, where to go, or a best practice or a framework, or what just 1, 2, or 3 things? What would you suggest? To get
Oh,
like a
that's a really
successful deployment, just is it maybe do this but don't do that. But you know, there's a lot of changes in there to go through.
exactly. So the best practice is always when you begin is if you want to start with deploying EPM, of course you have to if you divide your users up into groups, what do they need? And most of your users, they're going to need these one-time software install requests or whatever, or they need to elevate some weird app that requires admin rights. But then you have your developers. I can definitely tell you now that you need to start very slow with them, and you need to find a developer in your organization that's willing to listen and really embracing that security first mindset, because it's a big change for a developer to going from probably having full admin rights to now having to pressing this run with elevated access button. So that's number one. Number two is try and create these elevation rules per app that you need to elevate, and of course only scope them to the users that you want to have that you will allow to elevate apps. So how can I phrase this? So when you create elevation rules, if there's some app you that some group of users should be allowed to install, like embracing the principle of least access, only scope that rule to the users that kind of need it. And the third thing, have your knowledge base articles ready regarding what is this tool and how do you use it, sort of thing. So they know that little button, run with elevated access, if they've been used to pressing run with administrator instead, so they kind of know, okay, it's now that button instead I should press. Okay, great. Yeah.
Good.
Cool,
Good.
thank you.
It's not easy, is it? I think
It's very difficult,
complexity
especially
comes in various flavors.
yeah, especially if you eliminating your local admin rights, and you want to replace it with EPM. Some users are obviously they're not going to be very happy. So having those knowledge base articles ready with all the information, that's really super useful. So, and of course, start slow, start really small, and start with some users that really embracing the change, and maybe one or two users that's just really very difficult. But I'll leave that up to you, of course, because if you take away the local admin rights, there'll be something like I can't work anymore and all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
Good. Good. All right. Okay, I think that's about it. I think, unless there's any other further thoughts or questions, then please turn the camera on, unmute while we're at it on the EPM subject. But otherwise, just want to say, yeah, thanks, Maz. I think you did a great job there. I think with the demos, and especially you mentioned earlier with the hotel Wi-Fi side of things. So really good. I think it's certainly, I think when we wear multiple hats with M365, I think this is probably one area, isn't it, which sometimes gets implemented either through third-party solutions or wider teams who looks after the infrastructure, and then Intune kind of falls in their sort of lap to look after it. So great session. Okay, well, look, I think I won't take much of your time, everyone. Thanks very much for attending the M365 UK. I hope that was useful. I certainly, as ever, learned lots. So certainly refreshing for me. And so M365 UK will be back most probably around in the autumn time. Just planning some more sessions around this, and in-person event in particular here in London, UK. So stay tuned, please, on meetup.com/M365UK. In the meantime, like I promised earlier, the recordings will be made available. Those are the links, so feel free to take a picture of that. But if you come to the techchirag.com, my blog site, then all the links and everything else you'll find from there. to be able to get to it. And obviously, I would welcome your sessions as well on sessionize.com/M365UK for any insights, your real world experiences, just like Mass did today. Very easy. Say it how it is and show us what you've got, and then get yourself a session at M365 UK. So with that, want to wish everyone a happy summer, I guess. Please take care of yourselves, and see you soon. Thanks very much. Thanks, Matt.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.